it's the worst thing we eat when it comes to global warming. This is beef. When you only account for the emissions that go into the processing, transportation, packaging, and selling of a food product, the difference between these foods isn't so great. When you add the emissions from growing and processing food for livestock, you can see that animal products have higher emissions than vegetables. But the real gap comes from these two factors: the emissions associated with the farming process and the impact of land use. Jokes aside, though, methane is a huge contributor to climate change. It's the second most emitted greenhouse gas after carbon dioxide. But it traps more heat than carbon dioxide. Its global warming potential over 100 years is 21 times higher. Among human-related activities, enteric fermentation is the biggest contributor to methane emissions globally, more so even than the methane emissions from burning fossil fuels. And it's a big reason why the farming process-related emissions for beef and sheep are so high. The second reason is land use change. Starting in the 1700s, the amount of land developed for humanity's purposes started to skyrocket. Only a tiny amount of this is due to our built environment, like cities, towns, and other infrastructure. A vast majority is for agriculture, and when you divide that up, you see that land for grazing animals far surpasses land for growing crops. Converting all that land to farms to make way for grazing or growing crops releases the carbon that was once stored in trees, other plants, and the soil.
How are we going to solve this problem? The best way to do this is to reduce meat consumption. But how do I know how much meat we eat? Using a weight calculator is ideal, but we can have a handier way. According to the Iowa WIC program diagram, the palm size serves 3 ounces of meat. According to the Hong Kong Department of Health guidelines, an average adult is recommended to take in no more than 180 grams of meat, fish and egg per day, equivalent to a piece of 6 oz steak. In other words, the ideal way is to consume meat within 2 palms. In the US, the average weekly meat consumption including poultry, pork and beef is 53 ounces. In HK, research conducted in 2018 shows that Hong Kong has one of the highest meat consumptions per capita in the world at 664 grams per day, which equals to 163 ounces per week, which is 3 times than in the US. Using a meat calculator shows you how it all adds up, but also how the environment and climate would profit if meat were replaced by vegetables. As mentioned above, Hong Kongers consume 163 ounces of meat per week. We could split it into 50 ounces for poultry, 50 ounces for pork, and 63 ounces for beef, or in any more practical ways you find it out. It is always too far from the guidelines, but imagine if we cut down half of the total meat consumption by 50%. We know how many resources could save by choosing the right food.